And
It's June 11th, 1995. Go ahead.
the problem I had with the professor's thing is it's a very, very he too misunderstands in that article, in a sense, the word love. Because you said it was very judgmental. Love cannot ever be based on virtues and law. In a sense, he was doing what he was criticizing.
Mm-hmm.
It was a heavy morality trip that he laid out.
I was shocked by the article because I've always heard people talk about Doug Kamek with, admiration.
Mm-hmm.
He taught at the law school here.
Mm-hmm.
And this thing sounded to me like it could be any one of the moral majority just smashing yet again another picture that comes out.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, yeah, I mean, you walk out of there and you think, well, there's, one of the has, us boring husbands walk out, and this is a movie about but you think about it, and Clint Eastwood was not all that, he was a pretty hollow character.
Very. Yeah.
And the other thing I thought about is that, it's just a lie, is that most husbands are not as boring as that guy is. Most lives together are lived on the details. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely right. But most of them started with passion. I mean, here's an Italian girl who marries an American soldier over there. Tell me there wasn't some passion there.
It was passion that got her out of her culture, her tradition. There was grass is greener. There was everything under the sun there.
And the other thing Patty said is kind of, what is this bullshit? There's a line in there where she talks about her life. She gave up teaching for him. She really liked teaching. She, if you want to do something about your life. Don't go off from one man to another man. That's not your life.
Absolutely. I wish Patty could talk to that.
Let me switch chairs with you. You're squeaky.
I won't rock so much.
That's okay.
Lloyd will hold my hands down. What's big this week for you? But on what you're this was not unimportant, that film, to me, and the reactions. While I agreed with everything the prof said about the movie, it's bullshit in a way, I think the fact that the movie is a bestseller is indicative of our world today.
The book was kind of, I feel like like Love Story by Eric Siegel, kind of pablum.
Mm-hmm.
It's pap. It's not.
But that sells.
Yeah, and it's it's not a book about. There's all this admiration for this woman who won't change her life.
Mm-hmm.
Who won't change her life. I think Patty's point, when that line came up in the movie, she was saying, I could see her kind of visceral reaction to this woman who, for her, that was what was the matter with this woman's life, is that she quit her job for her husband and, she, all that stuff. And, and her husband says that when he's dying, I know you had dreams and I'm sorry I couldn't, blah, blah, blah. Could have easily done it.
Sure.
Let her teach.
Yeah.
That fulfills some dreams that she had. That was what was satisfying in her life. It's I don't know. But, the line you were talking about, if we go on, we won't be the same people. I'll start blaming you and our love for the pain that this causes everybody. And, but yet if we stop, it'll fade and won't mean as much and that kind of thing. I'll carry it in my heart. The only way I can carry it in my heart is to stop it now, and then it is what it was. It was this magical thing.
But see, what I'm getting at is the law prof made a big issue about it's myself and not others, quote myself. True. But what I'm getting at is what's bigger in our society than to be all you can be. Myself in our world today is number one. I mean, in everything that goes around, to be all you can be is the best seller. And my rights are the best seller. My fulfillment, that's in today. That's the good today. And the best, all of us are caught up in that one way or the other in different situations and different.
Sure.
I guess what I'm trying to say is when the world calls something good, it is extremely seductive. Being corny here and getting into the work world, Marx was against 10 more minutes coffee break and 10 cents more an hour. He was against that. That seduces you out of the revolutionary will. Follow me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he didn't know what seduction was compared to life today. We don't have back-breaking physical jobs. We're seduced in millions of ways today. And what I'm trying to get at is what I'm up against is what the world has pronounced God Almighty good on. And to think you can go against that very easily by just writing a law article, a judgmental article in the paper is a joke. You with me a little bit?
Sure.
That to challenge the good of our society, being corny, but to go 500 years back and to say God is dead 500 years ago to anybody would have been the dumbest, stupidest thing you can possibly have even thought. I don't care what a godfather you were. God isn't dead. By God. You know what I mean? I don't care how many people you killed and butchered and stole. You had your baptism for your godfather. I'm making all these little metaphors, but 500 years ago, the thought of God is dead and there is no God, it was just not even there.
It was unthinkable.
Unthinkable. Well, today, to question, to be all you can be, is unthinkable. And not take care of yourself is unthinkable.
Though I think probably there were people 500 years ago who thought.
Oh, I don't have any question with that, but if they did it publicly, they were burned at the stake.
Right. No, I understand. I just think that my only point was, I think that the thoughts about what does it mean to be in this world, philosophy, that there are not a whole lot of new thoughts there are that are only capable of being thought in this age.
I have no problem with that, but we are in a different age, and the thoughts have to be different. Why? Because love cannot be kept inside of oneself. It has to be acted out or it's bullshit.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's where the church is faked, to me.
Love, what I was saying, we talked about this before. Love isn't something that happens to you, that you fall into. I don't think. I mean, I think that's called something else. I really do. I mean, I think it's passion, it's lust, it's infatuation,
Fantasy.
Yeah, and that loving it's a verb. It's not a state of being. It's not you know what I mean? It's action. It's decisions. It's choices. You decide to do stuff. What I have
But you see, that's still abstract. And it cannot be abstract. And that's where the definition of love that has been given through Yahweh through Christ to Christians, that's not an abstract one. One doesn't have to believe that. But what we have today is abstract definitions of love. Love is respect for the weak, and love is responsibility. Love is openness. On and on and on, as defined by the Creator that some people believe in. I would say that that's right on. In real life, it's right on. Mm-hmm. That when the weak are not respected, I see nothing but violence and death.
Mm-hmm.
So to get a little bit to what you were saying, translated for me, love is also very conscious, very, very. We have to in the world make choices. I have to make choices. What's coming down is not good. It's bad. People say it's good, and they have speeches on it, and they get Channel 11 collections on it, and everything else. And it's bullshit. It's dangerous. It's destroying people. Just as I would like to believe with Marx that I would call Christianity the opium of the people that was practiced. Now that wouldn't get me very far unless I'm careful. But I would like to have challenged in that world with Marx what was being practiced in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. It was bullshit. Now today what's being practiced in the name of the good today is decided by man, not by God, quote God, by man. It's bullshit. And that has to be actively challenged. Now comes and it's global. Now comes a new problem. And I've said this much too much, but the early Christians who weren't yet subverted to bullshit were wise enough to have secret signs and not to hand out brochures on the streets of Rome saying, Caesar ain't the Lord, Christ is the Lord. Instead, they went in the catacombs and talked about how we're going to function and in this situation. But function they had to do.
Is that the beginning of your incognito?
Yeah, sure. Major work for me. And which leads to this thing I mentioned in the Project Neighbors meeting. I went down to to Guatemala, I knew I had to put my act together a little bit. I'm talking to some pretty high-powered people. Well, I'm trying to translate what I said about the third world to Slogan Street, and it's pretty hard.
I thought, you may not have been clear, but I thought it was a great idea. And I think you're absolutely right, is that if we free ourselves to try to think of, try to think of solutions. Let me finish the sentence. Free ourselves to try to think of the solutions that are not necessarily the ordinary ones.
Can't be.
We all know what the problem is. And when you actually say it, it's like, absolutely. It's always been the problem. You got slums. Of course they're run by slumlords. I mean, that's
our system.
That's our system. That's how things work. Is that they live in hovels, they live in shit.
But the enemy is not the slumlord.
That's right. The slumlord is a nice, simple-minded guy.
He can't do any other way and be in the system.
That's right. I mean, Kathy Evans described him. He's not evil.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's not real smart. He's made a decent life for himself out of coming from an alcoholic parent. You know, I mean, you think of him as being part and parcel of the thing, and it's just plain as a nose on your face that if you ask the government to deal with it, there's only one or two ways to deal with it. One is to ignore it and let it go, and the other is to do something about it and run those people out of there. And, you know, it's only if we get involved and think of some other way. And, you know, once you start thinking, you can think of, it's not easy. Because when you make the places nicer, how are you going to get the same people in there when you...
No, and there's certain, and that's where I've been working for a long, long time. I shared it in Guatemala, that's about it. There's certain things that if one critiques why we have a new world order, in which not everybody wanted. Most people didn't want change. Very few people want change. Why? How did we go from traditional society to the new world order? How did we go from America's good enough for itself instead of we're totally involved in every country in the world, whether we like it or not. We don't like it. And we're not going to be able to isolate ourselves. That's impossible today. So the question is, how do we go from this? Being corny, but how? I went through this hard. How do we go to mandatory busing when blacks and whites, Republicans and Democrats, nobody liked it? Why did we go into it when nobody wanted it? It was no presidential candidate or mayoral candidate could stand and say, I want, what's it called? Busing?
Immigration?
It was called something else, but I'm for busing.
No, they say it.
Nobody would dare say
it. It had some euphemism for it.
Yeah, I can't think what it is.
No, I know what you mean.
But the question that I have is, how come we got it when the mayor, the all-powerful Big Daley, the all-powerful president, nobody wants it? Why do we have it?
Have it because that's the legal solution.
Well, it's a little deeper than that, I would argue. And it's a very important argument, incidentally, why we have it. It's more than legal. Don't give yourself that much credit.
No, I wouldn't give myself or anybody any credit. I was just saying that I was using that as a handle. It's not a people's solution. It's
right.
I meant it as a handle to say it's an imposed solution.
And where did that come from?
That doesn't meet the needs of the people who are involved. I mean, we've talked about this before as the three young black women who integrated my high school in Montgomery, Alabama. I mean, unless you think about it, it's a I'll do this for what it will make of me. This hard thing. That's about the only value there. It can't have been nice for them. It can't have been a good experience. The other thing that just not to take you off track with this, is that nobody likes change. That's the one set of lines in that movie that Clint Eastwood said that I had some resonance with. Was when he was talking about, change is here all the time, and almost to the point that it's a constant. And I think that we are fairly conservative in the way we live our lives. Is that we don't like change, even if we say we like change. It's hard for us to deal with in each one of our lives. It's like.
When I was with Ellul, I talked about this, and I made some stupid comment or something that, there's sure a lot of chaos out there today or something like that. I don't know what. No, the problem is we don't have enough. The problem is nobody wants to upset anything.
Yeah. And that kind of embracing of change,
it's very predictable. Everything we're doing is very predictable.
What?
Our so-called change.
Yeah.
If it's predictable, that's a contradiction.
Yeah, no, I understand, but I'm just saying that real change is
surprise.
Is a surprise. Yeah, it's.
But Holiday Inn advertises there are no surprises, and that sells.
That's right. Well, I think about the South of Lincoln Way thing. You raised is it. We're talking about how do you make a real change. One that's desired, one that you want to go to.
I think we have an opportunity south of Lincoln Way that's unusual. Gets dropped in our laps. I really do.
I was shocked at what I saw behind Moody Labs there. I guess it's the only way I can say it. I know south of Lincoln Way is poor, and I've ridden my bicycle around there.
And all that goes with it.
Yeah, but I've ridden my bicycle around the front of the street. And when you go down the alley behind Lincoln Way, behind Moody there, you're in people's backyards. You're where they live. And
it's teeming with kids.
Yeah.
But see, when we were talking on Emmanuel School, this has always been, I'm not into Emmanuel School right now, but it's always, I've been so many situations, including VU and everything else, but we're not equipped to handle this. VU would get rid of a student whom they accepted, and the student went off bad or half-cocked or so forth, and, we're not equipped to handle this. Who is equipped to handle it? We keep shoving them to people who are less and less equipped to handle it. If a manual church with all of its power and strength and skills and know-how, 3,000 the best and the brightest members.
Can't handle one little kid.
Can't handle a fucking little 11-year-old black kid, which it has no other.
Well, who's equipped to handle it? The guy came and talked to Trinity's youth group, and it's some boys' home. He said, we take the kids that nobody else can deal with. And they are kids who are not nice. They cuss. They lash out. They haven't been loved. They're, just horrible kids. But you got a whole campus full of them there where he is. That's not the way you deal with that stuff, it seems to me. What happened in the village when you had the village idiot? Did they cast him out?
No.
Did they kill him?
No. And they didn't have ramps on the sidewalk, but they lifted him up.
That's right. That's right. I mean, and that's not to argue against ramps on the sidewalk, but it's to say that that
the ramps on the sidewalk meant that kid or person didn't have a friend anymore. He could now wheel himself up the sidewalk and feel good about himself at pretty heavy expense.
And I'm not saying that I don't think we ought to idealize it. The village may not have dealt with a village idiot in the most friendly way all the time. I mean,
no question. Yeah.
I don't think we ought to make it into more than it is. I mean, it may mean he didn't have a friend, but the kind of the dependence there is something that may have played badly for the cripple or whatnot in the village too. But at least it was their problem, and they were equipped to deal with it because it was there.
That's the main point right now.
And
VU has tried everything it can to get rid of south of Lincoln Way. I mean, it has knocked itself out to get rid of it. Even what you experienced on the negotiation was part of that. You heard part of that. Like, damn sure there's no housing in here.
Yeah. No low-income housing.
No low-income housing. I mean, it's all, we got to get rid of it. And so hopefully us, we are trying to do battle against what everybody calls good. If you just get rid of these bastards, these drug addicts and everything else, where do they go? I went through this with Sandburg Village in Chicago, having destroyed the ghetto, Italian ghetto, and just shoved it down the street. That's all, where they were less capable of.
Well, and I thought about it this last week in terms of my criminal defendant. Is that our society gets rid of it, we put them in jail.
Sure.
But we don't,
good example.
What society, quote unquote, wants to do, not on an individual basis, but is to kill them, is to cast them out, get them out of here. And that is, put them to death, put them in prison. What we don't think about is that they're coming back. They're coming out. They're going to be somewhere, whether it's the poor south of Lincoln Way or the guy who's committed a crime. We got to figure out how he's going to live in society. And to put him in jail is the last thing. That's the last resort.
I'd like to throw out just tidbits of the elements that need to go into this, rather than go into the big. Right now, let the tidbits. That's a decision I'm making right in my head right now. Just a couple of tidbits, and let them eventually evolve into more profound analysis or something. But whatever we do in Guatemala or Locust Street, I won't go into this now, means that whoever the weedy part, the first world folks, which is a problem we're going to talk about too, we have to really take a look at ourselves first. I don't know how these things are going to be done, even with our little group, We have to take a hard look at ourselves, and I've been through this with VBA. I had to push people to give part of their own housing budget and share it. And that was a different ballpark than giving the cream off the top. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
This thing ain't going to happen unless we learn to at least take our housing budget that we have for our own families of 4 and make sure that this new family has at least the same amount of money for housing of their family of 4. That introduced something that I really saw some heavy struggling with. It was totally contrary to the good of America. It was no longer charity. We were into charity prior to that. Now we're into sharing. There's difference. There must be better words, but you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard. I mean, I earned mine.
Mm-hmm.
And to give part of what I've earned, because what I set up was very small for each family, but we weren't making it without some changes. What I set up voluntarily, don't want to do it fine, had to be voluntarily all the way. I had to persuade. What I set up was totally contrary to the American charity way. Totally contrary. It was in a sense, without that word ever being used, socialism, in a small, tiny little way. You know? Very biblical.
Well, and I think about it in terms of family.
Just so you're clear, what I'm talking about is that these commitments, voluntary commitments, had priority over anything that your kid suddenly needed or should have or anything else. You made a commitment to
No, I understand.
to housing.
I understand, and it's much different. Most of us give the cream off the top.
That's right. We can afford
that we can spare. And
the worst that can happen is we'll skip a meal going out. That's the worst that can happen.
That's right. And I think that's largely true. Is that we don't change anything we do in order to give the charity.
I don't want to get into it now, but that's what I mean by this first part.
Yeah, and the
this giving has to be not charity. Has to be sharing, and totally gratuitous, no strings attached.
Well, that's why I said it's like family. It's the things you do for your kids, or for your brother who's in trouble, or your son or daughter who gets arrested for something. I mean, you just do it. It's, why do they get their needs met? Because they're part of the family. It's not.
And that's also a major item, and that is until we understand that the family of man,
mm-hmm.
that we're members of the family of man, not just the runner.
Right.
It's bullshit.
No, absolutely. I'm saying that the kind of sharing you're talking about is the kind of sharing that, you don't think about, I worked for this, my son didn't work for it.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't deserve it. He deserves
That's my
it.
son.
He deserves it because he's there. He's part of our family.
And those kids on Locust Street are my kids.
That's right. And
so we have to take a heavy look at ourselves, and that needs to be discussed. A lot of things have to go into that. But whatever aid goes to the third world has to be gratuitous. No debts, no interest, no repayments, no strings attached. The world system is, if you are good to me, I'll be good to you. And this has to be a new system based on the word love. It has to be one of respect, of people who think differently than I do, act differently than I do, behave differently than I do, etc., etc., etc. There is a string attached in a sense. I mean, I'm being realistic. And that is, we always need to question the means. The first world, no way can they use any means of force. That's what the lawyer's article implies in a way. I mean, how are you going to act at what he set out? Without sanctions and force. The government can only operate through force and sanctions. That's the only way it can operate. That's why that's not where we go. Quite the contrary. No, the one string attached along those lines would be, I will not fool with a group of people dedicated to, quote, change, revolution, whatever you want to call it, which is fine. That's what I'm dedicated to, who advocate violence. If I were to sit with some folks, I can't even imagine where we're going with South Illinois, so this is totally made up. If I were to sit with a group of folks down there and we want to change things down here, and the only way we can do it is to bomb Roy Inslee's home, I would say goodbye.
Yeah, that's not a realistic fear.
No, I'm making a point.
Yeah.
No, it could be psychological too. I'm simply saying that I will not fool with folks that advocate the means of violence to make change. Franz Fanon. I mean, that was the way to change with the left in the 60s. It won't happen unless you stand tall and fight. Okay? I mean, that's common.
Well, that was
makes you a man.
It was a debate.
A pretty heavy debate.
On the left in the 60s. And some of us came down on one side of that debate, and some of us came down on the other side of the debate. And
But the ones that came out on the good side of the debate faded away.
No, we haven't.
Well, we haven't seen any.
Well, but I mean, we're
collectively.
I understand, but lots of people are still involved in that, in fighting the good fight without the violence. My experience with it is that the people who actually, the first ones who sat in the administration building, which was more or less nonviolent,
Florence Scallon,
were a lot of people there, who I'm not talking about Florence Scala. It was easy to martyr themselves and less easy to do the work of trying to make some real change in the university. It was easy to go in and get arrested and get kicked out of school and have somebody else fight that battle for you. Some of us were in there fighting that battle about how do we get them back in school, how do we change the curriculum, how do we do this, that, and the other thing. And the weathermen, whose answer was to bomb things, were counterproductive. I mean, they turned things against us rather than for us. They were not agents of change; they were agents of reaction. And I think that's where violence fits in. I mean,
but that violence is really out there today still. That's what we're reading in the papers every day. It's really heavy out there.
Well, I think there's a couple of kinds of violence. One is, the weatherman was a conscious decision that I apply my intellect to this problem, and I think that violence is going to get me from here to there. And I think a lot of the violence we see in the world today comes out of something else.
You see, I call bureaucratic state force and sanctions violence. Just because if the state does it, we call it force. We don't call it terrorism, and we don't call it violence, but it's violence. CHA has only used by the state and the city violence to do the right thing. I have never gone along with it. I've never agreed with it to this day. And it doesn't work, for one thing. Makes things worse in every case. Storming the buildings and cleaning out the gangs is violence.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah.
and I can't go along with that. So getting back to South of the Lincoln Way, don't think for a moment if we didn't sit down, this might not ever happen, but sit down with some folks that they wouldn't have some pretty violent thoughts. No, don't think for a moment sitting down with us we won't have some very forceful thoughts. I'm not about to participate in this if they're going to spit on me. Both have to be worked at. That's all I'm trying to say. One will be psychological. Our violence will be psychological. Mm-hmm. Theirs will be physical.
Well, if you're not going to get involved in this, if they're going to spit on you, then you're not going to get involved. That's a lesson I learned with the Moyas. Is that it's don't look for thanks.
No way.
Don't look for nice motives. Don't do it. Don't do it and expect to be thankful. I mean, if we're doing it because we want to do it.
Well, that leads to another. I'm starting with the small instead of the big. Okay, but it leads to another agenda item. Whatever. First of all, put this in the package. Locust Street cannot make it without help. That's a given to me.
Mm-hmm.
Cannot make it without help. They don't have the resources to make it. They need tons of help. Technical, financial, everything. Okay? Know-how. That's a given. No, within that framework, we've said that the aid has to be gratuitous. That means time, energy, professional, know-how, money, whatever. Being corny so we can see something. I can't even imagine what all this is looking like. I could see Mr. Inslee saying, I'm sure you got in the basement of 508 Union, if that thing were cleaned up and renovated, the basement, and we put 2 washers and 2 dryers in there, and maybe we had one apartment responsible for cleaning the joint. It has to be kept clean, but washer and dryer would be offered to them, and you would offer the space to them, and we would offer the cleanup and renovation. Incidentally, a laundromat is so needed. They all walk with huge bundles all the way to 7-Eleven. It's incredible. And that's a real drudgery and costly. This would, whether there's charge or not, here comes my point. I'm just trying to put a little crummy thing on the table to make a point. It would bring a lot of people together to even make this happen, But what's done, we're offering to the people space, a room, and 2 washers and 2 dryers. Now, what they do with that and how they deal with that, whether they charge twice as much as 7-Eleven or it's free or God knows what, it has to be self-determination. 100%. Now, I repeat the selectivity here. There is some selectivity here. That this has to be a handful of people coming together that want to change things for the better and want to work at it. I don't see any way out of that. There has to be some selectivity. I think we have to be realistic there. But what they decide to do even there, the aid would be always there. That we would say, now, if you go into a little underground entrepreneurship here for the neighborhood, before you decide that, we want you to know the price you're paying, the good you get and the bad you get. You understand? You should understand what it means to go under the table when it's not zoned for this or whatever. You're paying a price here, and you're taking some risk. And matter of fact, I advise you not to do it that way. But they make the decision. At this time, in this place, was the only way out for us. So I'm being corny. I don't even know what we
do. Yeah. Well, the thing that...
But totally democratic and...
No, I understand. And, partly this brings to mind maybe a way to approach, what you're suggesting is maybe a way to approach what the real problem is down there, because if we were to go in and fix up Roy Inslee's places for him and make them nicer so that he could rent to a better class of people, he'd end up renting to a better class of people.
No question.
If not this year, next year. Mm-hmm. The people who are there now are not going to be the ones who get the benefit of it. And that's the problem. It's a slow shove out. And maybe the way to do it is or a way to think about it is, how can we take what's there, whatever's there, whoever's there.
That's the key word, who.
That's right. And to say, okay, this person's situation, this person lives in this piece of shit hovel. We have two problems here. We've got a piece of shit hovel, and we've got a person who's matched themselves to it. What do we do to not only raise the piece of shit hovel into whatever it can be? You can't turn a pigsty into a mansion, but you can turn it into a clean little room. And then at the same time, deal with the person who's there so that they, on society standards, quote unquote, deserve to live in this nicer place or are able to live there.
I am saying that to accomplish that, we have to respect these people. Now, stay with me. I know it's redundant, but first of all, we have to have those folks in that building who are willing to take the time to meet collectively to discuss these things. That eliminates some people, believe me, which is all right. Mm-hmm. If they're not committed to change, they shouldn't be involved. Okay? No, they might be committed to change until they hear what we got to say, and they might not. That's not for me. Okay, it's not for you. But there are no strings attached. We will be upfront with them and saying, I don't know what you need or where we can start. We'll even say some of the things that you're talking about. If we come in and at your request and fix up the place, I got news for you. Unless we do some certain things, it ain't gonna happen. You won't be here.
And I'm not talking about forcing change on people who don't want it and making them into something they don't want to be.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that the only way I can conceive of right now of not having the slow push out happen,
that's what I'm trying to get
fast push out, is that and it may be that we do something in this building because there's somebody there who wants to change themselves. And we don't do something over here because all they want to do is deal dope.
Okay. This is 35 years of I'm trying to put in a crummy little situation I know nothing about. But I'm saying that that how that first bridge is made, I'm not real sure. But here are folks that don't like what they have and are willing to meet about it. They will be suspicious as hell, rightly so, of us.
Sure.
That I don't even want to talk about that part right now, but our commitment is it's gratuitous. There's no strings attached to the aid. Now here realism comes in. We might have to say, at best we can afford to get 2 washing machines and 2 dryers at this time, and maybe some paint. I mean, that's our realism. That's what all we got a problem. But whatever. Or forget the washing machines and the dryers. We can come up with $1,500. And you look in your apartments, you see every the shit and everything else. We have some time. We have professional know-how and construction. We have this. It's limited. X number of dollars, limited. But it's your baby, and we're with you all the way. It's maybe a drop in a bucket, but it's still here. But I'm not saying it well, but it has to be democratic. There has to be a group of 20 people who begin to understand what democratic behavior is about. It can't. If they're not committed to that behavior, I think we're whistling Dixie. You with me a little bit?
Yeah. And my guess is that, from what we've seen before, that they're not all going to be dedicated to that behavior.
Right.
Is that, increasing exponentially with the need is me.
Mm-hmm.
Is who's going to get.
They watch TV too.
Yeah.
No, I'm a good friend of Bruce's, who's always drunk. And he'll be right out front. It's me. He doesn't care about anybody down there. Yeah. It's me. I don't need Bruce on this committee.
On the other hand, somebody who says it's me, if they're willing to sit down and talk in a room with a bunch of other people who say it's me,
that's already a sign.
It may be, if there's $1,500 and each me can't get it for themselves, but they got to
I hear you loud and clear. Sure.
Figure out what we can do with this. It may be a process that begins.
But
Bruce,
in all of this, and it's all sloppy now, but in all of this, what will be a challenge to us is it's so small it ain't going to change anything. Secondly, it's going to be more than we can afford. Thirdly, we're giving it might just go down to 2. I would argue that if we can survive those 3 things, I would argue this is the only place one can start. We can't start with the government, or we can't start with any big project with Terry Kilm, whatever his name is.
Kimmel.
I don't
know. Yeah, and I have
small is beautiful.
Yeah, and I have come to appreciate that more, having been born into my adult life as a political activist, where the solution you seek is the political solution for everybody, rather than one here and there. And it's funny. I see Roxanne Abbott in various little places around town every once in a while. She's always very friendly and whatnot, and we talk about our kids and whatnot. And it's just interesting. And she's we were in
Napoleon.
Never been to that new house. Never been to that new house. And that was something because somebody decided they wanted to do something to, help her out. Actually, one of the small things.
The another ingredient here, which inevitably will come up because when you hear the big arguments in Congress, Republicans and Democrats, the whole thing hinges on work. I would argue that's the last thing on our list.
Whether they have to do the work, whether they have
no,
to
whether jobs. I am not interested in finding them a McDonald's job. As a matter of fact, I'm much more interested in their taking their welfare time, which is not as much as we think it is, and being creative, whatever that means, and learn how to play.
Yeah, I mean,
we're in a world in which there are no jobs.
Part of that is whether you're giving with strings or without strings. That's
there are no strings.
And if there are no strings, it means that we're not telling them they got to go get a job in order to deserve this, or that they have to do the work themselves in order to deserve this.
Which welfare does, and everybody does. And,
the way I think about a lot of this is that we do this because we want to do this. Mm-hmm. And not, I think that's what a lot of people miss in this stuff is why do we give welfare? Do we give it because they want it?
No way.
Do we give charity because they want it, because they need it?
No.
We give for ourselves.
For our good conscience. You get a good conscience on it.
And maybe some more. We give because that's the kind of world we want to live in. We want to live in a world where those who are less fortunate are taken care of and we're willing to participate in.
Oh, the welfare system is, 11 out of every $14 that goes into the ghetto goes back to Wheaton and Valpo and so forth. I mean, they don't own anything.
Yeah. And I'm not talking about the crass economics of it, is that it benefits us to do it. I'm saying that whatever it does, we really do because we want to do it. It's because it's the world that we want to live in. We want it to be that way. We want to participate in it. It's the experience we've always had with Project Neighbors is that in doing what we're doing, we get more out of it than the people who are allegedly being helped get out of it often, I think. And we don't do it for that reason necessarily. But I think, that's one of the problems with this whole workfare situation. You're right. There's no jobs there. There's no glory in getting somebody a McDonald's job.
It takes them away from being creative. In a world in which there are less and less jobs. The only jobs out there I'm exaggerating, are taking care of people who couldn't get a job or just got fired.
I mean, there may be some other things to do, but I'm not sure
most jobs are service jobs to me. Taking care of.
I mean, I'll tell you quite frankly, I might rather sit at home and put my feet up than work at McDonald's, and I might think more of myself for doing it.
But we're in a world that tells you the opposite. I mean,
if I were to read a book, I would certainly think that was more valuable than going to work at McDonald's.
See, the Razas, this is very private, but the Razas are very determined to get off of welfare to get a job. That job gets her out of the house legitimately, et cetera, et cetera. Well, there are other ways to get out of the house and stay on welfare.
Be a volunteer.
Yeah, that isn't even considered. Stay on welfare and be a volunteer, and do something that you feel really comfortable at, and you can bring something to the table. That's not even considered today.
I've got a friend, Barney Auersler. He's a good friend of mine. We studied philosophy together, did politics together, anti-war stuff. Went out and spray painted sidewalks with fists and slogans. Did a lot of stuff. And Barney he's a co-chair of the Greater Pittsburgh Unemployment Committee, which deals with unemployment issues. And, it's not government, it's a rank and file activist kind of organization trying to deal with people who are out of work and what can they do and whatnot. And Barney works half a year, gets paid a decent salary by the unemployment committee, and he gets laid off, collects unemployment till it runs out. They figured out a way to have the government subsidize their operation. He does the same thing all year round.
That is fabulous.
It's just, he works long enough to build up the unemployment credits so that he can collect a full 26 weeks unemployment. And however long it takes him to do that, they pay him for that. And then he gets laid off and collects unemployment. And he gets paid during this part of the year, whatever it'll take to get him the maximum unemployment benefits that he can get, which are, limited to $138 a year or whatnot. And he's been doing that for years. And he'll go to see the head of the unemployment bureau or whatever and say, "Well, are you one of my clients now, or are you working now?"
I think that's a great one. The thing that we discussed on women doesn't have to be women, but is not unrelated to some of this. Because another major point is the whole production sphere has to be turned upside down. Now that means we have the biggest problem. I haven't made sense yet, I know. We're raising our children, and that whole thing on Roz is part of it, everything else. In the entire world today, the hope of the third world, everything else, the key word is production. That is as sacred of a word as you can get. The Republicans need it, the Democrats need it, everything else. And I want to later on get into that a lot more. But I just want a tidbit here, 2 seconds. Instead of being the good, we're so happy when our daughter becomes manager of a plastic electric toothbrush factory or something, in which she is a major contributor to production of garbage, destruction of the world's ozone, green forest, et cetera, et cetera.
What are you talking about?
Today we're proud of somebody who is.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And in reality, almost all production is a guarantee. I walk through Walmart, and there are not many items that I'm different, I know. But trying to be as liberal as possible. There are not many items that I could possibly use in need. There are factories making all this garbage all over the place, and using up resources like crazy, and also destroying human beings' individual lives, because you can't work in these factories and exercise freedom. You're putting in 8 hours a day in which you don't dare question anything, especially above you. The only time you can question is at lunch break with a colleague. And then sometimes you better be careful.
Mm-hmm.
So you're destroying the individual 8 hours a day in yourself. College, that's all college is destruction of the individual. It's about getting a job and paying the price and learning to pay the price and very quickly giving yourself brownie points because you've just destroyed yourself. I'm good at it. I could go on and on that one. But the productive sphere is the good in our world today. It's the good in universities and colleges, churches, and everywhere. At a manual school, the whole thing is based on that, being number one and competitive. Now, the reality is we're destroying our individual selves and destroying, for me, God's creation. We're in a new world order system. And I've backed this up with as much talk as anybody wants and hard stuff. We're in a system that says we have to produce plastic toys in order to survive. Now, I don't believe that. I don't believe we have to produce garbage in order to survive, but that is the new world order, and it's global. And if Taiwan can produce more efficiently plastic toys to survive, power will go over there and put an American multinational behind it. But that is the world system, and it's a lie. We don't have to do that to survive, but we believe we do. Everybody believes. Universities believe it. Hari believes it. Now, I don't believe that. I cannot find anybody that can show me why producing garbage is necessary for survival. I can't find that anywhere. Now, they can say, well, you wouldn't have a job otherwise. Well, then let's don't have a job. Why do we have to work 8 hours a day if we don't produce garbage, we do have to have toilets. I'll go along with that. Indoor plumbing, and I think cars are here to stay, but we don't need lots of them, especially certain cars, et cetera, et cetera. We could reduce the garbage an awful lot if we just made cars that are more sensible. And toilets, I think we need a toilet factory. And a lot of things. I'll go along with a lot of things. But we could get rid of 80% of the shit. Now, to do that, let's recognize that in that sphere of work, we're preparing kids to train to go and do shit work. Not only that, they're making toilets. It's already shit. But we need it. It's necessary for survival. We have deemed that's necessary for survival. We've deemed it necessary to produce aspirin and a lot of pills and work in drug factories, okay? But let's take the sacred out of it. It is not beautiful work. It's dehumanizing work.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the place that we really ought to champion our goals to be. But somebody has to do the service. Somebody has to go and do this military service. So I'm being corny, but not so corny, because if someone were to push me how it would all work out for the whole world, I would really go into it.
Well,
we would have to have a system whereby, just like military service, you have to do 2 years in most countries, that we train people to do for 8 years, 2 hours a day, production service, or whatever.
just 2 hours a day.
Yeah. For
or
maybe 10 years, you're over with. You've done your duty. Whatever.
You've produced enough shit
that we deem necessary.
Yeah.
And your military service, everybody has to do. Okay? And your different inclinations. I'm more inclined to produce drugs. I'm more inclined to build a house or something,
Well, part of it is that if you're talking about what it takes to recreate the necessities of life, I mean, you're talking a utopian society.
I'm out.
Wait. I'm just saying that, and you're talking communism or the Israeli kibbutz or whatnot. But I think you're right. Is that we have to figure out, how do we get people to think in this way? Because I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we could, it doesn't matter what you do for 2 hours a day if you only have to do it 2 hours a day. It's not, it doesn't matter whether my inclination in doing the shit work is to dig ditches or to make drugs. I can put up with anything for 2 hours a day or for 4 months a year or however you divide that out. If I've got some time then in the rest of the day to do some other things.
Problem. I recognize, it's not utopian, because the problem right now is we could go down to half days work and produce all the shit we're producing. We'd have to mechanize and cybernate a lot more than we're doing, which we could do.
Uh-huh.
Okay. The biggest problem, they've already discovered this in Germany, where they wanted to go down to a 29-hour week, and the people can't handle the free time.
Jeez.
I'm dead serious.
I know you are, and I've heard that. There is no touch point in my life where I can understand that. Okay.
Well, I can tell about the lifestyle that you in college and everything, your experience. That's not common.
Yeah, I understand, but I don't need a job to be totally fill my days up.
See, people are being programmed right now to go into that new damn dorm at Wernberg Hall. And that new dorm is one that is not fun and games. I mean, it's good living.
Yeah.
But it's work. They're going in there to play with those computers night and day and to do their A's night and day. Get into Harvard Law School. Now, before we finish, because time's out, this is a major area. But just stop and think now. First of all, my comment on utopian.
Yeah.
My comment has always been what's utopian is to think that things aren't going to get incredibly worse, terrorism, everything else, if we do nothing. That's utopian thinking.
Yeah, absolutely right. I agree.
Now, I do want to just throw this out. If production is not the sacred good that it is today, then that means the non-productive world is one that we ought to champion. What would that look like? I'm being corny and fast. It means that most of my 15 years of schooling is in liberal, non-competitive arts. Because you can't be competitive in true liberal arts. Of poetry, no one can be competitive in poetry and literature and history, etc., etc., okay? Only if you're trying to get a managerial job in the productive sphere do you make history competitive. Who gets all the answers? And they don't give a shit about history. It's just who got the A. If you follow me quickly, that means that you're literally training to choose to be. I'm going to be on the prison board. I'm going to be on the tenants board. I'm going to be on the school board. I'm going to be on the health board, and they meet in the morning. They meet in the afternoon. Not the asshole who's the administrator of the hospital who now leaves his family again and goes he's on the manuals board, he's on the bank board, he's on the school board, he's on this board, on Project Neighbors board, Hilltop board. No, these are folks that have trained with 15 years of liberal arts to the thing that people really want to be at. And some like the prison board, some like this board, some like this board. I'm being kind of corny and fast, but it's a way of looking at things totally different. Yes, and there's a lot of free time. And the whole major area of difficulty, which I worked out with my friend, is the financial, of course. The government is not to be out of it. But we don't look to the government for any of these things. Quite the contrary. Every one of us, in a sense, it's like the GI Bill and Social Security. Just by being born, I get money from the government. Period. That's something we can save time on. Salaries are out. All that's gone.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of this, but how we move from where we are now.
It's what I started out with, and I want to get back to it because I'm not whistling Dixie.
I didn't say you were.
No, I know, but I mean it has to be made real. I've tried to make a little bit real with washing machines and so forth.
I understand that, and I think that the challenge is always, with the true sharing is such a difficult.
See, when you were at the meeting the other night, I have no idea what you gave up.
What?
Apparently, when you came and you had told me earlier you couldn't, I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. I was glad to see you there, okay? Just for your sake, as well as ours. I'm being corny and I'm being psychic over here. It's rare that we choose the non-productive sphere over the productive sphere. That's where our first world group has got a lot of learning to do and a lot of need to help each other do. How do we give time and energy that's at least as important as the productive sphere? Now that ain't going to come easy in our world. That's what I'm saying. Our world is powerful.
Though I must comment, the struggle in my life has been to give the productive world the attention that it needs in order to participate in the support of my family, which I have to do.
No, and I think you're very different. And I think that's why something is going to happen with Project Neighbors because I think there are a couple of people that are in that ballpark. Paul is struggling with this. I can tell.
When he has time to think.
And if you push him, he will choose the non-productive over the productive. You push him.
Yeah.
You don't have to push him too hard either, but he'd rather not hear it.
And I find Ivan.
He has a shot at it.
Ivan really. I mean, one thing you say about Ivan is that he puts his money where his mouth is.
No question there.
And not just the cream.
Yeah.
I think.
I'm sure of that.
In terms of the amounts.
Now, see, here's where you can really, as we develop this, I can really lay some stuff out that's hard to challenge and worth hearing. I'm being arrogant, okay? To you, in tongue. What I can't do is convey that to Ivan, to Paul, to other people. How we can put, see, some of this stuff is going to have to be put not in the kitchens on Locust Street, but in our kitchens on the table. And that's not going to be easy. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Putting into practice even the woman thing. I just share quickly, I might have said it already, but I went home, and here's a call from Johanna Speckle. They met after that meeting, the women, and said a word. They met, and I really identify, because I'm also different. Because I'm not a specialist. I don't belong on a faculty, and so I've experienced some women things. Now she knows that they got to say something, and I've gotten across to her that you're going to have to say something to the board, but you're going to have to say it after you've done your homework, which means meet with Paul and Mike and myself on the building. There's a lot of things that are not simple, There's a lot of things that we just can't do, And some things, we could do it. We won't like it, but we could do it if you push it, And all kinds of stuff, but don't bring it to the board. It won't work that way. The board has to decide democratically that we want to go with this or not, but you've got to make a recommendation. Okay, she knows that. On the next step, this is where I can identify. She's scared to death. She's scared. See, to her, Paul is the one, that knows everything. Oh, that's bullshit. I know as much as Paul. You can do a few things better than I do. Okay, on construction, but he's the test for her. And before our two committees meet. My God, this isn't even the report to the board. This is meeting with Paul and Mike and myself. Before we meet, can I meet with you? And go over some of these things that I don't want to do anything that's crazy, and so forth. But I know exactly, if I were to give, I've been asked in time to give a pulpit a couple of times and so forth. I can't go like if I'm a pastor of a congregation. I mean, I got to check everything out. I wouldn't dare speak at a faculty meeting unless I've gone with Ted and gone over some stuff. And
I know. Yeah.
So here's Johanna. I mean, I want to scream at it. Just say it, man. It's no problem. It's not that simple.
It's just me and Paul and Mike.
Yeah.
But no, I understand.
It's really interesting. I mean, I know all this. I've experienced all this, but it's. I'm lucky enough to have this experience of the phone call. I'm lucky enough to meet with her. I'll meet with her tomorrow morning at 7:00 in the morning. And what she doesn't know, I'm learning about women. I'm learning about how do we bridge these forces, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm talking too much, but urban studies, faculty meeting every Thursday, lasts 4 hours. Absolutely accomplished nothing. Every faculty meeting. Nothing. Nothing hard, okay?
Run by Jody.
Oh, I don't care who. It didn't make any difference. That was us. It wasn't just Jody, it was us.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, here comes president of a small manufacturing company who's got a daughter in the program and visiting her and so forth. And can I sit down in your faculty meeting? Sure, sit on the faculty. Every time, this happened often, every time, my God, he said, I'd give anything if I could, if we could have meetings like this.
Mm-hmm.
Here he is in 40 minutes deciding $80 billion, you know, in his meetings, you know, charts, graphs, and how he would love to be on meetings like this. The thing is, we don't get anything done.
We have the.
Now, how do you marry the two?
We have the interminable discussions that he just has in his own head, or sends or delegates to a subcommittee to bring back, make the recommendation, do it. You got all that in the
chart.
You got to participate. So.
But psychologically, that's where folks would rather be. You know, Project Neighbors is in a sense urban studies faculty meeting. I mean, we don't get anything done.
Yeah, but our meetings only last an hour.
Yeah. That's facing the reality. Urban studies could last 4 hours because we had nothing else to do. And we were getting institutional pay for it.
Yeah.
That's rare.
Yeah, that's right.
That was extremely rare. But,
well, Project Neighbors actually does get some stuff done.
No, I'm exaggerating.
And maybe out of
but we don't have a financial report. We're not into that economic thing. I mean, half of them don't know what's going on financially. But no, the marriage of the two is very crucial. One is productive and one is the non-productive sphere. I think we talked in urban studies about very extremely important things. That's why these guys are excited. It wasn't boring stuff.
Yeah.
But you don't have time for that at a board meeting. I mean, a typical board meeting.
And as life goes on, you just plain don't have time for that.
That's right. You end up with no time anyplace.
Yeah.
Or
you steal time from one thing for another.
So that we have to put some of these things on the table with whom? Hilltop folks, Project Neighbors folks. That's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and our own kitchen tables.
Yeah, it's going to be a problem. But if it's not done, I'm not sure we're inventing our own new lives, which we better be about.
And of course, at our own kitchen tables, this may not be relevant to what we need to do to reinvent our own lives.
Well, the one thing on inventing our own lives I'm absolutely certain of, it's got to be individual and collective, both.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely both. And it can't be, this is a key thing here, it can't be I'm trying to, I got my quick word, which I don't want to use, but it can't be anti-technology, anti-know-how, anti-institutional on the one hand, I'm not saying this well. We can't allow roles and institutions and technique and projects and money run the day. Half the world tried that. It totally failed. And brought the people in later. The people, locustry, and technique have to come simultaneously at the same time. We can't come in with a new CHA program
that they don't participate in.
I don't care how great it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a failure. It's a failure a la the Soviet experience.
And part of the failure of the